When it comes to procuring cause of a sale, there just isn't one factor that automatically guarantees you'll get your commission. But there are things that you can do to improve your interaction with buyers and listing brokers. I'm Bruce Aydt. I'm a realtor, a lawyer, and owner of a training and consulting business called Real Estate Education Resources based in St. Louis. Let's take 5 minutes to talk about how to improve your chances of a smooth transaction without procuring cause problems. Many real estate professionals believe if they do this one thing, they're guaranteed to get their money. There are no guarantees. Every transaction is different. Good communication is key. You must explain to the buyer prospect how the process works. If the buyer understands your role in the transaction, you can avoid a lot of issues down the road. If you don't build a healthy relationship with the buyer from the get-go, don't expect to be automatically included in anything the buyer does. I see a lot of agents who expect buyers to act a certain way when the buyer has no obligation to do so. Getting an exclusive buyer agency agreement is an important part of the relationship with the buyer. In Florida, this agreement isn't always immediately signed, but it should be. You should also be working with the buyer to help them get qualified for a loan, showing them multiple properties, educating them about the process, and showing them the steps you're taking to help them find a property. Hopefully then, if the buyer wants to see a home at a time that you're not available, the buyer doesn't decide to call the listing broker directly. Granted, some buyers can be unreasonable. They send you a text and expect an immediate answer, or they call you and want to see a property that very minute. So be sure you return buyer calls in a reasonable time, meaning immediately. Respond to texts right away and have a backup plan in case you aren't available to show a home to the buyer that the buyer wants to see. From the cooperation perspective or the broker-to-broker perspective, communication is vital as well. You should be communicating with the listing broker about your status as an agent who represents the buyer. For example, if you show a buyer a home via lockbox, most lockboxes record information identifying who showed the property. But an email to the listing broker explaining who your buyer is and the agreement you have with that buyer is essential should the buyer decide to call the listing broker to see the property again. This can happen when the buyer's agent is not available right when the buyer wants to view the home. You want the buyer to call you first always so you can organize the showings. So what do you do if you find out a buyer wrote an offer through the listing broker or another broker? Your first step should be to call the other broker and explain the relationship you have with the buyer. Many times this phone call is beneficial in working something out in advance or avoiding the problem altogether. It may also be helpful to have your broker call the other agent's broker and explain the situation. Keep in mind, when it comes to procuring cause, you can't make assumptions. Don't assume that you're entitled to be paid. Each case has different facts. Each hearing panel is made up of different people. There's no guarantee about how a hearing panel may rule. Too many real estate professionals assume that if they do that one thing, like show the property to the buyer, they'll get paid. But it's not a guarantee. So be cautious and always build a relationship with buyers so that they understand what's expected. And answer right away, it makes all the difference.